Yeah, so here we are a year later. Who would have thought it? I can be really hard on myself sometimes, which is the reason I wanted to make this video, because I think it's important actually to take a step back, take stock and think, oh, I did okay. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Rebecca Felgate. I didn't upload last week because I'm really hard on myself. I actually filmed a video and had my editor edit it for me. I'm gonna pay him for it. Didn't upload it because I couldn't stand myself when watching it back, which, you know, I think on the one hand, great, good to get content up there, but on the other, I just didn't. If I've learned anything from the past 5.5 years, I don't want to immortalise something on the internet that I'm not happy with. So you're gonna get a longer upload from me this week, and it's quite a big one because I'm talking about how my life has panned out over the past year in lockdown, various states of lockdown and COVID. So you're gonna need to grab yourself a drink for this one. I've already made one. I want to show you my Instagram reel of me making it. It is what I'm gonna call a Great Bitter Blighty. It's made with a English style IPA, but from a brewery out here in Canada called High Park Brewery. And I've included some bitter and sweet ingredients, and my reel that you're watching next to me is all about kind of, I guess, a bit of a nostalgia of missing home, liking beer, loving cocktails, mixing it all together and coming up with something new. So cheers. Quick rundown of the ingredients. It is an ounce of Campari, an ounce of Whitley Neal Blood Orange Gin, an ounce of freshly squeezed orange juice, a little dash of grapefruit juice, and then topped with the IPA, given it a little stir, served it with some grapefruit in there. It's really nice if you like little bitter drinks, and it's reasonably low ABV. Yum. Okay, so much has happened in a year. I guess I kind of look a bit like Rambo today, but my lockdown fashion, it's just always increasingly weird. I try and roll with it, but when my hair's up, I always feel like a bit of a crescent moon. So I'm probably going to be speaking to you with side face, just because I've naturally trained myself to do that over the years, working on a YouTube channel when I feel like my face is exposed, unnecessary detail, but there you go. Okay, so this time a year ago, my world felt like it had come crashing in, and I'm sure that it felt that way for a lot of you. Friday the 13th of March was the last night that I went out in a reasonably normal world. I went for dinner with my friend Kate at the Fairmont Royal York. My friends Kate and Megan. Megan was working there at the time. We had a lovely dinner. I dressed fabulously. I didn't know that everything that I liked doing was about to be taken away for a really long time. On the Sunday, I did have a whiskey tasting to go to, and it was the last event that I had lined up that wasn't cancelled. We all knew that the next day Toronto was heading into lockdown number 1. We knew that there was a virus out there, and at first, on that Sunday, which I think was the 15th, we didn't really realise how serious it was. Monday was the first day of the lockdown, and that's when I started reading the news and finding out a lot of information, reading a lot of articles about how deadly the virus was, and it sent me into quite a big panic. I can be anxious about things when a situation is unclear. The biggest way to fuck me up is to present me with too many variables. I'm really good at dealing with bad situations once the cards are laid out on the table, but when there's shifting elements and I don't know the ground I'm standing on, it can be really overwhelming for me. And obviously that was the situation for everyone at the beginning of the pandemic. I was living with my ex-boyfriend Danny at the time, who a lot of you know, and I guess first and foremost it was a big pressure to put on that relationship because we were locked up indoors together, just there. And, you know, it doesn't feel fair to go into that too much, but it also really is such a big part of the story. I will say, I guess first and foremost, I'm really glad that he was there on a friend level, because I had someone to share those first few days of confusion when we all thought that this virus was going to kill us. You know, somebody who would brave the grocery store with me, and someone to be there while I cried, and I cried a lot because, like I said, it was just so debilitating and confusing for me. I'll come back to the relationship side of things, but I just want to say work-wise, you already know from the video I made you about my business and how that got started, that around that time I was mostly making my money from events. So I would go to events and cover them on social media for a brand, and they would pay me, or I would be paid to go out and interact with a brand in a local restaurant or bar, and that suddenly became completely impossible. I had quite a lot of work lined up for the spring, and in a day, on that Monday, everything got cancelled, and I believe that I lost, I think it was $6,000 in a day, but it could have been 8, I'm not sure. I know it was 8 in total, but I think in that one day I found out that, there was $6,000 that were not going to be made. And at that time, that was real make or break money for me, because I just started my business. I just quit my job. Things were a lot harder than they are now. And that really sent me into a deep spin. So for that first week or two of lockdown, when everyone was watching Tiger King and baking banana bread, I couldn't really function very well. Everyone was like going live on social media, and I've got a big following, and I felt a big pressure to do something or say something, but I just couldn't speak. Very unlike me, but I was lost for words. I was just trying to make it through, and it took me a good couple of weeks of really just like throwing myself against the wall of it to finally be able to try and do something on social media, which was when I started doing my cocktail videos that eventually became really successful and led to kind of where my career is at now. But at the time, I literally thought my career was over. And I just want to take this moment to say, like I started this video by saying I can be really hard on myself, but when I stop and look back and know that this time last year I was crying because I didn't know if I'd be able to pay the rent, and I lived in a house with somebody else, so the rent was a mutually shared cost. Now I'm sitting here a year later paying the rent entirely on my own, and while I'm not bawling by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not worried about it in the same way that I was last year. And I think for that, having managed to achieve that and now being able to do it by myself, like, I'm very proud of myself. And I think, it's worth taking moments like that to step back and think how far I've come. So business-wise, you know what happened because I made a whole video about it. I won't talk about it too much, but I started to be able to pour a little bit more energy into making my Instagram videos, which was a really good distraction for me. But the thing that I found really, really, really hard is that before all of this, I would have considered myself an extrovert. I did my 16 personality test quiz thing. I don't know if you've done it, but I came out as a campaigner. I think I can put that on the screen so you can see it and you can read up on my personality if you're curious, but I'm very, 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 very social, and my life before the pandemic was going to events maybe 3 or 4 times a week, mingling with people, seeing my best friends at the weekend. Like I was out, I would say 4 or 5 nights a week in total. I'd probably be out doing things with people. And while now I can reflect and think maybe I was burning the candle at both ends, that was how I enjoyed living my life. And I don't think I saw my best friend Ruth for nearly 2 months at the beginning, and that was hard. I remember one of my best friends, Hayley, she baked some lemon squares and dropped them outside my door, but like didn't knock or anything like that because we were so scared of the virus. And I remember obviously being really pleased that she thought of me and baked me these things and driven across the city to leave them for me, but crying because I couldn't see her and I didn't know when I was going to see my friends again. And actually even saying it now, like, brings back that feeling of just like complete isolation. And even though I know I was living with Danny, that relationship didn't end up working out, and like that was something that I kind of had an inkling might be the case even at the very beginning. So I was locked indoors with a friend, yes, but somebody that ultimately wasn't going to work out with, and that was just really pulled the rug out from under me. Oh my god, it was a lot. I think a lot of us are gonna have some kind of like weird PTSD about it all for maybe years to come. And obviously the situation is different now because I am living alone, but I'm just glad that those first moments weren't completely alone. Socially, obviously, things got a lot better towards the summer when we were allowed to see friends again, and I remember that being like completely momentous. The summer wasn't the worst thing in the world, because while we were not able to eat indoors, I don't think ever in Toronto, we were able to mingle outside, and so I had a lot of park hangs with friends. I made a lot of cocktails for my friends in the park. Hayley and I managed to go to Montreal at one point because Montreal was a bit more open, and that was something that we were able to do together, and I'm so glad. We had such a fun time, and my friends and I went camping as well, which was really, really great. And they're things that we probably would have done in before times, but I guess they felt even more special because there really was only maybe a 2-month window when we were able to do that kind of thing. So the two hardest things for me were absolutely like the lack of social contact and financial instability at the very beginning. And also, I haven't seen my family since December 2019 because I wasn't able to go back to England last year. I know some people that have gone back, but it's complicated each time. There's a period of quarantine involved, and it just never made sense for me to. My sister and I were supposed to be meeting each other in Mexico in January. Obviously, we booked that before we knew that things were going to get really bad again, and then obviously that didn't end up happening. So that was a double blow because I thought, finally there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'll see my sister, and that didn't end up happening. And I feel a bit like I've missed a year of my niece and nephew's life. I used to go back to England at least once a year, but usually twice, and for quite a long period of time. And to not have seen my niece and nephew, who are now 6 and 3, he'll be turning 4 soon, it just feels like, a chunk of their childhood that I just haven't been there for, and I would have done. I was supposed to be going to Germany for one of my best friend's weddings, and that didn't happen. And I know every single person watching this video will have had something cancelled because of COVID, but it was a bit of a bummer. On the 18th of March, so 5 days after things started going crazy, so I was supposed to be getting a train from Toronto to Vancouver, but obviously that got cancelled, and that was very upsetting as well. I know those first few days were totally calamitous. But I will say there was quite a good spirit in the summer of just like stealing fun here and there, because you couldn't really plan on anything. So when things did come off and plans did work out, I remember it being pretty exciting. One of the biggest things that happened last year, which I know you know about, is that I managed to write my book. And truly, I don't know if that would have happened if there hadn't been a pandemic, because like I said, I used to be going out 4 or 5 nights a week, living a fantastic social life, and I wonder if I would have had the energy to put into that creative project had I been being more social. I just don't know. But one of the things I did manage to do was stay at a hotel for a week in Niagara-on-the-Lake and write part of my book, which really got the ball rolling. And I, again, don't know if that would have happened before COVID. Like, I was allowed to stay there for free for a week because I exchanged the stay for Instagram and blog promotion, and maybe they wouldn't have needed it had there not been a pandemic. And that was a really, really, really great experience. So fun, such great breakfast, and like the time I spent out of the city just managed to really clear my head. And I should say as well, while my wider travel plans were completely cancelled, I saw a reasonable amount of Ontario in the summer when it was possible to do that, and I don't think I ever would have necessarily spent a week in Niagara-on-the-Lake or gone on the road trip that Danny and I did to places like Timmins and Wawa. I don't think we ever would have gone there, and for all that relationship didn't work out, we had the best time adventuring through Ontario in that kind of, in that stolen window of fun. So after actually a very good summer, as we approached the autumn winter, things started rolling back again. Danny and I broke up at the beginning of November, and that was just around the time that things were really being drawn back, and he moved out. And so then I was facing a second lockdown on my own, and I know a lot of people had experienced it the first time round, so sort of knew what they were doing, but this was all new to me. And like I said, I would have called myself a major extrovert before this all happened, and to then be in my house on my own, able to see one friend in a bubble, was a bit of a mind fuck. In December, it truly wasn't that much of a problem because I had so much work that I was so busy I couldn't even really focus on my personal feelings. It was just like, get the work done, honey. And then when Christmas came around, I made a decision with two of my friends who lived together and were isolating together. We would spend Christmas together after a period of isolation. So that was quite nice. I spent Christmas with my two best friends, and again, didn't really think about solitude because we were having a lovely time. But then when I got back Boxing Day evening, things did start to get a bit crazy for me. At first, it was kind of okay because I was just about finishing my book, so I had that goal in sight. So once I did, I was really hurtling towards that. But once that was done, was when I really started feeling a bit weird in myself. I know everyone's had a lockdown birthday now, unless actually you're a summer child. You probably have managed to have like a weird COVID birthday where you were able to see some friends outdoors or whatever, but a lot of us have had like isolation birthdays. And like I said, I'm supposed to be seeing my sister in Mexico, but that got cancelled. So I spent my 32nd birthday in lockdown. One of my friends came over and treated me like an absolute queen. All of my other friends banded together to send me balloons and flowers and things that would be physically present in my home to make me feel good on my birthday, which was really, really nice. So that was great. But then once that all calmed down, we were all sticking to the rules and I was in my house on my own again. Content-wise, it's been good for me on Instagram because actually I feel like I found a new stride. I've got these sassy cocktail videos that you see in my alter ego, Miss Rebecca J, and usually the start of the year is weird for business, but it's been actually quite good. So I've had plenty of time to do that. I've had time to write my newsletters. I've had time to start this YouTube channel again. But yeah, like mentally, it's been really, really weird the past few months. Like, I am one of the most motivated people I know, and I don't say that to be a dick. Like, I just am very motivated and I've got a lot of energy, but I just find myself like staring at the wall for long periods of the day, and time has just taken on a bit of a different element to me since the end of January. And I'm really I've never thought more, this is going to sound very wafty, I've never thought more about my energy than now. Before I would just sort of, do things that made me feel good, but just bumble on through my life. But now I've got a real focus and understanding on what might happen that could derail me in a day, because it's all fine living in lockdown on your own if you can like ride that good energy train. But if something comes along and makes you feel bad, then it's like, and I don't know whether you're feeling the same way, but like hits that I take now can feel even worse than if it was just like something happened on a normal day. Yeah, but just to like end the video on a real bitter note, and I don't mean that, it's just there is something that happened to me last year that I find really difficult to talk about and I want to tell you about now. It was hard to figure out where to place it in the video, so I think just here is a good part. And I feel anxiety talking about this because every time I exercise my freedom of speech and talk about what actually happened to me, I feel like I start a fire in some way, and that shouldn't be how a person feels when they talk about literally true things that just happened observably. My former employer, the channel that I used to work for, tried to sue me last year, and it happened at the very beginning of lockdown, and it made my life so fucking stressful. I know that the channel itself is not a stranger to lawsuits, so perhaps it felt a bit more normal to them, but to me it's just like a normal person living her life from a normal background, just doing my thing. It really struck me in, I was gonna say the balls. I don't have balls, but if I did, it would have been a firm hit. And I won't go into the particulars of that, mostly because I'm really fucking afraid, and that's concerning to me, that fear stops me being able to talk about something that happened to me and hurt me and really drove a massive wedge in my relationship with Danny. So yeah, that isn't something that I'm going to be going into now, but just to tell you that it happened, and it went on for, it was really happening in March and only really settled down towards the end of the year, at a time that I was already feeling isolated from my friends and my family, at a time where my work was really uncertain. To be served with a lawsuit and have to find a lawyer and fight that every day to stand up for myself, like, I won't be broken, and I guess you know that. I'm pretty spunky, but fuck me, it took so much to be able to live through that during a global pandemic. And I think that's all I'd like to say on that now, other than if I'm sitting here a year later thinking I did well, imagine how well I could have done if I didn't have to put so much energy into fighting a lawsuit with my former employer. So yeah, a weird start to this year, but I feel like I'm finally getting back on track now that I'm focusing on what makes me happy and what doesn't, and things are starting to open up again a bit. And I'd love to say that my situation, it's all resolved in my mind, but it's not. I'm just happy that I've got the energy to do all of my creative things, and I hope that when the world does open up again, I'm keep on the good energy I've had work-wise. So yeah, that was last year. Pandemic, some work collapsing, some weird social things, writing a book, fighting a lawsuit, pivoting my business, and I sit here a year later thinking, holy shit, how did I do it all? And to really bring it back to the beginning of the video when I talk about being hard on myself, yeah, that's unjust, because while I might sit there at the end of the day thinking, oh, I really didn't do enough today, I can sit here at the end of the year thinking, Rebecca Felgate, you climbed a mountain and you did not let anyone drag you down. And I guess cheers to that. I never will. I will always be okay, because I'm me and I trust me. I just look forward to the days when it gets a little bit easier. And I know this is a bit of a raw video and I've talked a lot, but I hope you enjoy it. Let me know. Oh, I've written a blog post about the things that I've learned in the pandemic, so I'll leave that link below in the description box if you want to read it. Please do follow me on Instagram if you're Canadian local and you want to see what I'm up to in Toronto, and I'll speak to you next week. Cheers. Ooh, what a year, what a year. I'm looking forward to speaking to you next year, and I really hope that next year, I'm going to speak to you next week, but I also look forward to reevaluating things in another year and seeing how far I've come, because that's the aim of the game, baby. Cheers.